Hey everyone, it's GC Smith here, and it's time for another Magic the Gathering video. Today we're going to be taking a look at my block constructed event for the upcoming Manchester GP at the end of May 2014. Now, obviously it's Theros block constructed, and I am building a mono black aggro deck, as you can see from this. So let's dive straight into it. Playtesting for this deck, I should say up front, actually, it's been very positive. Winning a lot of my playtest games and went 4-0 at a FNM for block constructed recently. And it even does well against some of the standard decks that really wreck the standard format. So I think this deck might do quite well at the event. Maybe a couple of tweaks to be made before the event, but and I'll let you guys comment on what you think should be changed here and there, but I'll dive straight into it. So for an aggressive deck, our real estate is going to be quite small compared to some other decks. We're running 21 land. Most decks are running 23, 24, and that's even with ramp. But those are decks that want to consistently hit land drops every single turn and need to get Polychronos out turn 3. So need to definitely hit 3 land and definitely want to be drawing ramp as well. So these are the decks that kind of need a lot more land because they're running a lot of higher drops. We can afford not to really hit that much. Hitting more land can allow us to play multiple spells per turn, but we can already do that quite easily really early on in the game. So see, we've got 21 land, 19 swamps, and 2 temple deceits. The temple deceits aren't really necessary, but I think it's nice to have a couple of Scry lands. Scry being very, very powerful in the current format. We want a couple of Scry effects in the deck, a couple of Scry lands. But I think 2 or 3 is quite the sweet spot. We don't want to be having to play a lot of a land tapped at the beginning of the game. We want to be playing spells and aggroing really quickly. But to the mid to late game, Temple Deceit can really help us dig for removal if we really need it, and isn't terrible early game either. So moving on to our creature base, we have 4 Tormented Heroes and 4 Gnarled Scarhides in our 1-drops. These are 2 very aggressive and really nice creatures. Tormented Hero is quite nice for a target to be bestowed upon. His heroic effect isn't terrible. It's not the best effect in the game. It's marginal, but that 1 life has won me games, so it's not, ignorable. And it is only a 1-drop, so you can't expect it to have something too powerful. Gnarled Scarhide, a very good card. It's an enchantment creature, so it's hit by more removal than, say, Tormented Hero is. And there's quite a bit of enchantment removal in the current format. But it's a very good card. It helps trigger Tormented Hero and some of our other heroic creatures. Really good enabler, and it also allows us to push through blockers if we bestow it on our opponent's creature mid to late game. Moving on to the 2-drops, we have Spiteful Returned 4 and 4 Painseers. Spiteful Returned, a great creature. I often play it's a 4-drop actually in this deck more than a 2-drop. Sometimes mainly because I've got Painseer 2-drop and I'd rather be playing that. And again, Spiteful Returns bestows a really good enabler in our deck. But Spiteful Return isn't terrible itself. Swinging and doing 2 before blockers can be declared, or before blockers can do anything, is very powerful. It's a really good way to push through damage. I've whipped in a few times to win games simply because I need to do 1 or 2 points of damage, and the opponent had an army of blockers. So Spiteful Return is very good, and it's very good when bestowed onto other creatures. And Painseer is a good card advantage engine for this deck. It's the perfect card advantage engine for this deck. And it's a 2/2 beta for 2. It's nothing terrible. It's an all-round good card. Next up, 2 Master of the Feast. Now this is a card I thought would be better than it is. I originally ran 4, but playtesting showed that 4 was often too much. I was giving my opponent too much card draw, and it didn't actually have as big impact on games as I wanted it to. Games where it was having an impact, I was winning anyway. These are kind of mid-range matchups that kind of don't do very well against mono black aggro. That said, a 5/5 for 3 isn't ignorable, and I definitely think the deck needs these 2, and I can't complain about them other than that. The card advantage, though, that it gives the opponents has sometimes come into effect, and it is often sideboarded out against the mirror. So we've got Master Feast there in our 3-drops, for our 3-drops. Elsewhere in the 3-drops, we have Agent of the Fates. Great card. This is a Death Toucher heroic guy. Yeah, this guy is amazing. The Death Touch is very relevant in most matchups I play. I've never been in a matchup where Death Touch has been ignorable. apart from against control, and that's just the nature of the beast. But its Death Touch effect allows it to wipe monstrous decks off the board, allows it to swing into things other people couldn't swing into, simply because you can't profitably block it, unless you've got First Strike, and there's very little of that in the current block, and I've got ways to remove the wages you gain First Strike from. And its heroic effect is brilliant, because the amount of heroic creatures we've got, bestow creatures in this deck, and all the bestow is 4 to 5 mana, so it's very easy to bestow next turn on curve, forcing my opponent to sacrifice a creature. And if worst comes to worst, we can always Bile-Blight our own creature, and trigger its heroic effect to force our opponents to sacrifice a creature. Great card, and gets very big very quickly with bestow. Then we have Night Howler. This is often played as a 4-drop because we want to bestow it onto our creatures. Again, trigger Agent of Fate's heroic effect. But with an aggro deck, this guy gets lots of value. Our creatures are going to die quick. Either die really quickly because they're quickly outclassed by our opponent's blockers, or we're going to be chump blocking for days and creating very big Night Howlers. And Night Howlers mean that our other 1-drops that do survive this chump blocking and swinging into effort get bigger on the next swing. Very good creature, and I love having it. Next up we have Herald of Torment. Very good card, a lot better flyer in the long run than Massive Feast, simply because we bestow onto our other creatures and give our other creatures ways to get flying over them. And that bestow again is very relevant on heroic effects, and it's just an all-round good creature. It's more relevant than Master Feast, I find, simply because our creatures, when bestowed, become at least 5 power, and can trade profitably with our creature because we still get to keep the Herald of Torment. So we don't want 2-for-1 ourselves, and it doesn't really have that big a drawback compared to Master Feast. It's all-round good card. So moving on from creatures, to non-creatures, we have 4 Thoughtseize with a proxied one at the front. I still need one more, but I should have that in time. Hopefully I'll get it this weekend before the GPT on Sunday to try and get, obviously, the 2-round bye at GP Manchester. I think our deck really loves Thoughtseize. It's one of the most powerful cards in the format currently. Being able to strip our opponent's hand apart. Often our opponents will be keeping hands a bit sketchy in block, and are all built around one card in their hand. Strip that card, we strip their entire hand. Very good card. Next up we have Bile-Blight, 2 of. Not the best removal card in the format, but it's up there. It's very good. Against the other aggro decks, it's really powerful. Mono white aggro creates a lot of social tokens and plays lots of the same 1-drop really quickly. And again, actually, the mono black aggro does the same. It also allows our creatures to trade with some of our opponent's bigger creatures, and it's a very good card. Next up, we have probably the best removal in the format. We have 4 Heroes Downfall, able to hit creatures and planeswalkers. Probably one of the most powerful cards in our deck. A card we absolutely love to draw at any point in the game. I've never had a time where drawing one of these is terrible, apart from against a control deck when I really want an extra creature. But other than that, it's a very good draw, and I love the card. Definitely helped me win a lot of games. Then we have Whippoorwill, so 1 of in the deck. It's very relevant. I know a lot of aggro decks run only in the sideboard. But I find having 1 main board gives me a big advantage game 1, and I never really want to sideboard it out against anyone. So that shows you the power of the whip. There's never a matchup where I really want it out. I always want the life gain, and I always want the ability to whip in creatures to finish off the job. I think an aggro deck that says it wouldn't like to play some of its bigger creatures or play its creatures again to swing for lethal when they need to do the last point of damage, saying they don't want to do that, they'd be lying. So that's the 60 card main board. Oops, sorry about that, camera being a bit iffy there. Now if we were to move on to the sideboard, I'll put the sideboard into the picture. Our sideboard consists of 2 Night Howlers. There are matchups like Reanimator where we want a lot of more Night Howlers. They're putting a lot of creatures in their graveyard and we want to punish them for that. So Night Howlers are a very good way to do that, and we definitely want to sideboard more of those in sometimes. Mogus Morders, there's a lot of non-black decks that create big creatures. We want to push through our damage. This is one of the best ways to do it. Give all our creatures Intimidate and swing through for the victory. Also very good on a turn where we can play 2 spells and we have 4 mana up. We can swing with one of our, or 4 or 5 mana up. We can swing with one of our weaker drops early, on haste on turn. Very powerful effect. Next up we have Erebos, God of the Dead. Again, 2 of. We love Erebos in this deck. Against Control, against the Mirror, against a lot of decks actually. They sideboard into life gain plans against aggro decks, and we want to sideboard into our anti-life gain plan. And in the Mirror, it shuts down our opponent's whip life gain, allowing us to actually continue killing them. It's also a great way to draw cards against control decks, where we want to maintain a large card, or at least reduce the card advantage they get over us. Next up, 2 Dark Betrayal. I know there's a lot of decks running 4 of them, but it's not always relevant. There's a lot of matchups I've been playing against where it doesn't matter. The amount of matchups actually where it doesn't matter outweigh the number of matchups that it does matter, and I'd rather have that. Other removal spells as well that you'll see in a minute. So I'd rather, increase my sideboard's chances against other decks other than just mono black. So just 2 of those. We still want them in there, but we don't want a full playset of them like other decks are running. Or at least I don't think so. I've not had a negative effect because of only running 2. Next up, we've got 2 Boon of Erebos against the Mirror and Control. Definitely helps keep some of our creatures alive to punish them and deal more damage. Often we need to keep creatures on the board. Sometimes I only have 1 removal spell and our creature can stay alive for another 2 turns. Very powerful effect, and we definitely want it. 1 Barb Light in the sideboard to go up to 3 in some games. Again, against other aggro decks, Barb Light's a very good removal card, removing multiple creatures at once. And we definitely want that card advantage. So we're going to try and maintain that with an extra copy of Barb Light in the board. Then we have a 2nd Whip of Erebos, brought in against Control, Mirror matchup, and some of the bigger decks. Whip of Erebos, again, helps us whipping creatures and gains us life to stabilise against maybe some more aggressive decks. Even in the Mirror, actually, it's very relevant. Then we have our other removal spell in their sideboard, 3 Feast of Dreams, the last cards in our sideboard. People have told me Feast of Dreams is terrible. I tell them it's not, and I win games with it. The other aggro decks that are very relevant, mono black and white, and even some of the heroic decks, all have either a lot of enchantment creatures or enchantments that hit their creatures. Ordeal or Heliod is a killer for our deck. We need to produce a lot of damage quickly. We can't do that if they gain 10 life. So Feast of Dreams is a very good way to hit these decks really quickly. We've got 3 of them in our sideboard. It's also very good against mono black, which is why I have this in over Dark Betrayal. Again, a lot of decks only have like 4 removal cards in sideboard, maybe 5. We've got 6, including the Barb Light. So you've got plenty of removal to sideboard into to become a more controlling deck. Feast of Dreams hits mono black, hits white aggro, hits heroic. Can even hit some of the other decks if you see a lot of enchantment-based creatures in them. The green-based decks with Corsair, Crewfix, and Boonsater. And even some enchantment-based decks, like a green-white Enchantress deck I've seen that runs a lot of Eidolon Blossoms. Feast of Dreams, I reckon, is going to be a very relevant card, and I think decks that are running it, compared to decks that won't, will see a large advantage. There are going to be a lot of games where you wish you had Feast of Dreams over Dark Betrayal on my sideboard, and I'm glad I got it there. Mono black, there's never really a situation where I'd rather have Dark Betrayal, other than maybe on a turn 3 when we'll play a 2-drop and keep a removal spell up. But because I'm more aggressive than other mono black decks, I can play a 1 spell and keep this up. So, as it's my 1 power creature seeing powers my 2 power creatures, it's not that big a difference. So that's my 75. What do you guys think of it? As I say, it definitely does me well. If there's any improvements you think I should make, definitely comment below. Just tell me what you think. Sorry for the shaking the video and a couple of the imaging problems, a bit of my stand appearing in the frame. Recording this on an iPad, mainly because my camera is out of juice at the moment charging. And I wanted to get this video done now that my exams are over and get this up as quickly as possible to get feedback from you guys and see how you think this deck performs if you're running it yourself, or to give you an idea. This deck is very powerful. Beats aggro decks, beat Durdle decks. Control can be a bit of a bad matchup, but we definitely have the ability to go under it or over it with Night Howler. So tell me what you guys think, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.